Hi, everybody. This is Sophia Nelson, author of The Woman Code and founder of Club Woman Code. This is your January note. I started doing these mid-month messages to all of my followers, but specifically for Club Woman Code members to tide you over until you get your monthly Masterclass, which comes at the end of every month. So let's get right to it. If you have not yet watched my January 1st, 2019 Masterclass, it is still available on my Facebook public page, Sophia A. Nelson Esquire. Please, if you haven't liked that page yet, I need you to do so. We will get it uploaded to YouTube. A senior member of my team has fallen very ill. She's been in a hospital. We're excited to say that prayers work, and thank you to all who prayed and who know her. She returned home this weekend with her husband and her children, and we're looking forward to her being back on board really soon. So thank you for your prayers and thoughts. But I want to get to this month's message, but you need to make sure you watch January 1st Masterclass, because what I talked about was putting your past behind you once and for all and making sure that you are not living a life based on what's behind you or what you lost, or that you're not in a perpetual state of grief or mourning or hurt, and that you really understand that in order for you to move into 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and everything that God has for you and that life has for you, you're going to have to say goodbye to some things. You're going to have to bury some dead things. You're going to have to let some people go for real. You can still love them, but they can't be in your life. And unless and until you get those fundamental first principles down that I talked about on January 1st, on New Year's Day, you are not going to be able to get all the rest of the messages for the year, all the rest of the master classes. Today I want to talk about the notion, the concept, the thought, the real goal that you should have and I should have of being comfortable in your skin, of being comfortable with who you are. You know, I shared a story on my Facebook page recently. I remember this vividly, being all of 22 years old, and I was with my boyfriend, and we were the summer before going off to law school, and we were visiting his sister up in Boston. And she's a doctor at Tufts, an amazing woman. I should look her up. Would love to know how she's doing. But she was probably about 10 years older than us at the time. And I remember her saying to me, you know, Sophia, one of the greatest moments in a woman's life, in a young woman's life, but certainly in a woman's life as she matures, is when she gets comfortable with herself. And of course, at 22, I didn't understand what she was talking about. I didn't really understand what she meant, but it made sense to me. You know, now that I am 50, I understand absolutely what Michelle was talking about. What she's saying is, and I understood this probably at 35 and certainly at 40, but at 50, as I've said to you before, you are now a seasoned woman. You have lived. You are a half a century old. You've experienced joy and sorrow, laughter and pain. You've experienced loss. You've had financial success and financial difficulty. You've maybe even experienced the loss of one of your parents or both of your parents, or you've certainly probably lost your grandparents at this stage. I'm blessed to still have one of my grandparents alive. My maternal grandmother turned 89 years old on Martin Luther King's birthday, January 15th, and I tell you what, I think she's healthier than me. So God bless her, and we're just humbled to still have her with us. But I never forget something that Ayanna Van Zandt, the great Ayanna Van Zandt, if you don't know who she is, you're not alive. You need to Google her. You need to watch Fix My Life. But more than that, you ought to follow her on YouTube, because she's a very inspirational channel, but she keeps it 100, and she's a member of my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and Ayanna gave us a great word at leadership in 2017 in Las Vegas. And what she did was she talked about the seasons of a woman's life, and she talked about that we all go through seasons starting in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, up into 70. And she didn't go beyond that, because her point is, once you've lived to be 70 years old, your job is to simply sit back and let people love on you and take care of you, and your grandbaby should be hugging you, and maybe you've got great-grandchildren, and you're retiring and you're traveling, and hopefully you're experiencing the joys of life that we work for. But I like the fact that she parked herself in that 40 to 50-year-old zone and talked about, at the time a woman gets to be my age, 50, you are the wise woman in the room now. You are supposed to be the adult in the room. You are supposed to be comfortable with yourself. You are above pettiness. You're above gossip. You're above meanness. You're above all the things that women can do to each other. And certainly this happens at all ages. But you get to a point where if you're a Christian woman or a woman of faith, You should be that woman that is in Titus chapter 2, the woman who is the wise woman. She's now teaching the younger women how to be wives and mothers and merchants and business women, and how to show up in a synagogue, and how to be godly, and how to give something back. You know, my co-pastor Jill Whitlow had a word last night at our annual Connected event, and she talked about the seed and the growing, and how we started as a seed, and they even gave us these really cool little seeds to take with us as a reminder. But you go from a seed to a sapling to a tree, and you grow and you mature. And the theme was, instead of you go girl, it was you grow girl. And I thought it was a good word, because her point was this, is that by the time you become a woman of 50, 60, 70, your job is to reproduce. Not reproduce in the way we think of when we're young women, having babies and starting families, or even at middle life, but certainly at the time when we know that physically we no longer reproduce babies. We are to reproduce godly women. We are to reproduce women who are comfortable and confident, who know their value, who know their worth. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, are you comfortable with who you are? Do you know who you are? Do you know whose you are? Or are you still being tossed to and fro? Are you still comparing yourself to this one and that one? Do you get caught up and care about what people think about you or what they're saying about you? Or are you a woman who's arrived at a place where you know what you want, you know what your code is, you know what you live by, what you will accept, what you won't accept, you know when to cut nonsense off? I had a situation just this weekend, I'm not going to get into details, where there's some gossip going on. And the gossip is outside of my circle, but it came into my circle. And I did what real women do. I picked up the telephone and I had a conversation with one of the sources of this gossip. And the conversation I thought was actually a pretty good one, a pretty positive one. But I forgot one fundamental rule. If you deal with messy people, if you deal with people that have a propensity and have shown themselves to be dishonest, messy, and gossips, it doesn't matter what you say to them. It doesn't matter how positive you try to be or what you tried to impart to them. It will fall to the ground like the scripture talks about with the wheat and the tares. There's some people that the word takes root in. There are other people that will hear it. It will fall away. They'll act like they never heard it, and they'll go and do the very thing that they know they aren't supposed to do. What am I saying? What I'm saying is, I made sure that after I did what is godly and what is right, and tried to speak life and did the carefrontation and not a confrontation, because I care about the people involved. When it got messy and when this person who does what she does started it again, I opted out, and I made clear to everybody in an open forum that I have nothing to hide. I've said what's right. I've done what's right. If you're going to do this, I'm not in it. Don't text me your mess. Don't talk to me about your mess. I've told you the truth. I've done what's right. I'm not going to play the game. A woman, when she's comfortable with herself, says, you know what? If you want to believe that I did that, knock yourself out. If you want to be with Miss Messy Pants, do that. If you like being with the gossip, be with them. But I'm not doing that. I'm too grown. I'm a mature woman. I work every day for a living, and I work hard for everything I have. I'm not going to allow myself to be drawn into mess. It is the same thing in our family, sisters. Families can be toxic. They can be awful. They can be wonderful. But we have to have healthy boundaries. And a woman who knows her value, and a woman that knows who she is and knows the season of her life that she's in, knows what she's going to keep out and what she's going to allow in. And my challenge to you today for the January note, the first month of the year, with 11 months to go now, you're already down month number 1. You got 11 to go. My challenge to you, as I challenged everybody on New Year's Day, is, are you going to keep living in the same mess and muck and mire? Are you going to keep messing with the same toxic people? Are you going to keep being in the same abusive relationship? Are you going to keep being with people who weigh you down and tear you down or are negative? Or are you going to be the change that you want? Are you going to be the light? Are you going to do something different? Are you going to say, hold up, wait, stop? This is not what I do. This is not what I allow. This is not okay, and I'm not participating. Cut it. And when you cut it and mean it. Otherwise, you're going to keep going back. I said this today. I had some friends over, and we were talking. And I said to them, you know, it's a funny thing. When you have to make a decision about who you really are and what you live by, you got to be willing to really stand on that. And sometimes it's going to mean walking alone. And sometimes it's going to mean hurting the feelings of somebody you care about. Maybe a parent, maybe a sibling, maybe a cousin, maybe an aunt, an uncle. When you know that their behavior is toxic, and when you understand that that's not where you are anymore, or that's not where you've been for a long time, one of the things that I had to learn growing up in a family of alcoholism, of violence, of anger, that's what I saw for the first 18 years of my life, pretty much every day. And I had to make a decision I wasn't going to be that person. And that meant that not only was I going to get up and out and go to college and go to law school and make something out of my life, but it also meant that I was going to get counseling. One of the first things I did, and I wish that my grandfather Samuel were still alive because he was with me my first day of college. And when he took me to get my books, I'll never forget running into a professor who I know very well now to this day. He's a good friend, he and his wife. And I never forget asking him, in my naivete of being then 18 years old, and saying, have you ever heard of this thing called Al-Anon? And he looked at me and he said, I have. We have a chapter here on campus. And he said, but why do you need to go to an Al-Anon? I said, because I grew up in a family of alcoholics, and I grew up in a family of anger and violence, and that's not who I want to be. And I thank God for Dr. Hayes that day. Yes, I'm calling you out. And I thank him for caring enough to tell me where to go. And I started attending those meetings. And I read the books about the healing for an adult child. And I read Joyce Meyer's books. And I read anything I could get my hands on. And I went to counseling. But what I learned was that it didn't matter how well I got. It didn't matter how smart I got, how educated I got, how healed I got. If I kept dealing with the people around me who stayed in the toxicity, who didn't want to get counseling, who liked being drunk, who liked being angry, who liked being gossips, who liked stirring up trouble. If I stayed in the midst of that, I was never going to convince them with all of my education and all of my smarts and all of my work and my books. I was never going to convince them to do what I did because they weren't comfortable with themselves. They didn't know who they were and what they wanted. They didn't know that there was something better. They didn't know that they could change at any moment, that what was always didn't have to be now. They didn't get it. And what I'm trying to tell you today is there's some people in your life, in your family, in your circle, on your job who don't get it. And they're never going to get it. So you have to stop trying to change them. And you have to focus on you. And you have to focus on changing you. And you have to focus on knowing who you are and being okay with it when everybody else is attacking you, when everybody else is against you, when everybody else has a judgment. Oh, she thinks she's cute. She thinks she's this. I get the crap all the time, my whole life. And again, the most vicious people have been members of my own family. And it's been hurtful. But you know what? You have to keep going like David had to keep going. And you know what? You have to keep going like Queen Esther kept going. And you have to keep going like Ruth kept going. And Moses kept going. And the Apostle Paul kept going. And Jesus himself kept going. If Rahab the harlot had allowed herself to be defined by her past, by her family, by her poor lifestyle choice of becoming a prostitute, she never would have let the spies in. She never would have allowed the touch of God to come into her life. She never would have made a different decision that propelled her into the lineage of the Savior of the world. Rahab was a prostitute. She was scorned in her day. She was mocked. She was derided by men for money. But Rahab knew that there was something better, and Rahab knew she could make a different choice. I'm asking you today, when are you going to make a different choice? When are you going to stop placating people who are no good? When are you going to stop tethering your life to people who are liars? When are you going to stop allowing toxic family members, toxic friends to take, never pay you back the money they borrow, never be there when you need them, never have a kind word, not understand the notion of reciprocity? When? Because the time is now. Time is short. Mine and yours. This is a new year. It's 2019. It's January. This is your January note. And my challenge to you is, are you comfortable in your own skin? Do you know who you are? And are you okay standing on that? I am. I'm not afraid of anybody. I don't need to prove myself to anybody because the way I live every day speaks volumes about who I am every day. what I give, how I show up in the world, how I treat people, how I have entreated people that mean me harm, tried to destroy me, lied on me, gossip on me, torn me down, and like I said, some of them in my own family. I didn't pay them back. I didn't go after them. There's a time, of course, when people do us wrong and they steal from us, they lie, they hurt us, where we do have to take action. There's a time when you have to hire a lawyer. There's a time when you got to go to court. There's a time when you have to do it. But there's other times in your life when you need to walk away because you know who you are and you know whose you are. And you don't need to get involved in any more discussions. And you don't need to keep beating a dead horse to death. It's dead. It's gone. Bury it. Move on. That's my word to you today. This is January 2019. Are you comfortable with the woman that you are? Are you comfortable in your own skin? Do you know your value? Or are you still trying to please your big sister? Are you still trying to make mom and dad proud of you at 60? Get over it. Stop. Live your life because it's your life and you're only going to get one and you're not coming back. Happy January. We'll see the members for Club Woman Code at the end of the month for your masterclass. It's going to be a good one. Please go to thewomancodebook.com if you're interested in joining us. And do not forget to click the YouTube channel and to follow all my social media feeds on I Am Sophia Nelson or The Woman Code Book. You guys have an amazing Sunday. God bless you and keep you. Bye-bye now.